Hello and Assalamu alaikum. I am Kashif Kamran. Now, just a day ago, on the 18th of July, the June 22 ACCA exam results were announced, and I am particularly having a discussion today on the AAA pass rates for the June 2022 exams. There is a downtrend in the AAA passing rates, and how alarming is that? And I need to discuss with clarity the reasons for this downtrend in passing rates. And is the downtrend something unusual, or is this in line with the previous passing rates for AAA? So I will be doing a quick but a more insightful discussion on the passing rates for AAA, particularly focusing on the June 2022 exams, because the passing rate has touched a bit low in the June 2022, and a lot of discussion needs to be held around the reasons so that the students are well prepared to overcome the challenges and overcome the issues in the upcoming September 2022 exams. Now, if I just take a quick analysis of the passing rates, particularly the passing rate for the recent paper, which is the June 22, the June 22 passing rate at a global level has touched 31%. Now, if you relate this passing rate of 31% with the last 5 attempts passing rates for AAA, this is nothing unusual, or the 31% passing rate is not something shocking, not something dramatic, not something to have a fear about. Because if you look at the previous passing rates of AAA, it's more and less on average 32%. You see the last 5 sittings on your screen, and it shows you the passing rates like 32, 33, 34. So 31 is not a very significant dip. But yes, in comparison to the last 5 sittings, the 31 is the lowest number currently on the screen. And that was in the June 22 exams. But we know mostly when I teach the AAA paper, and normally when I discuss things with students, we normally believe that it is 1/3 of the students globally who pass the AAA in the first exam sitting, and 2/3 of the students fail. And this has been a very common phenomena over the last many years. So I don't look at this 31 as something unusual or something out of context. This is much in line with the average passing rates for AAA, moving around 32.5%. That's perfectly fine at 31%. But yes, when the student look at 31% in comparison with the other papers like APM or ATX or AFM, they find this as an unusual passing rate. But we need to understand when you look at the passing rates for ATX or AFM, which has surged past 40, you need to do a like versus like comparison here. The ATX paper, the AFM paper involves a lot of calculations and lesser theory. When you're looking at the AAA paper has a lot of theory, and it's a complete theoretical paper. Now, we know the student tendency with theoretical papers is extremely bad, and the student performance with numerical papers are better in ACCA. That is exactly the same. If you look at the applied skill level, the AA paper, the F8 paper, in the June 22 exam setting has the lowest passing rate among all applied skill exams, and I believe it's 39%. So 39% for the AA paper, 31% for the AAA paper. The story has the same conclusion here. First of all, it's a theoretical paper, and the student has to prepare themselves for the mindset of a theoretical paper. And I'll come to that shortly. Now, we know the AA paper is a mandatory paper, and you have to give it. But when it comes to the AAA paper, you are choosing the AAA paper. You are opting for the AAA paper on your free will. Despite that, the performance going down is a big question mark. No one has forced the AAA paper on you that you have to give it, or is it like a mandatory paper? No, you choose that paper out of the 4 optional exams you had. And when you choose something, you take interest in that. You take responsibility for that. You take custody of that, and you try to do your best because you choose that. And definitely, you like the theoretical paper or you like the AAA paper. That's the reason you choose it. So against that, the 31% passing rate is putting some question marks and some red flags for us. So let's investigate the reason why AAA in general have a low pass rate, and particularly in the June 22 exam, the passing rate dipping to 31%. That is a 2% decline over the March 22 exam. And if you look at the high side of the AAA, which is 34%, which is more of a higher side of AAA, there is a 3% decline in the June 22 exam. So let's investigate any specific reasons behind the falling passing rates or the downtrends in the AAA results in June 22. When I took the feedback right after the June 22 exam were over, I took feedback from roughly 250 students, and that was a reasonable sample size. 33% student after the June 22 exams were over responded that the paper was difficult. That means 33% is not a majority here. Look at the majority. The 58% student declared the paper as manageable. And honestly, in the June 22 paper, there was nothing out of context. There was nothing unusual in the paper which was not asked before. There was nothing strange in the June 22 paper. Everything was as per the previous exam setting. So if any student has practiced recent past papers from September 2018 onwards, there was no nightmare in the June 2022 exams, and everything was organized and systematic and consistent with the previous exam settings. And 1% of the student said it was an easy paper. I hope that 1% was among the passing students for AAA June 22 exams. Now, the important thing here is the student assessment after they come out of the exam hall is a bit optimistic. You ask students their assessment, they say, I'll score 60, I'll score 65. The paper was very good. I did an excellent paper. I will score definitely something around 60-65% marks. And when it turns to the day of the result on the 18th of July, the student fail at 47, 46, 44, 42, and that's a big shock for them. First of all, you need to analyze that your assessment is optimistic. Your assessment is biased. It is not an unbiased assessment, because normally when you are assessing yourself, you are overrating yourself. And you don't want to look at a failure right after you attempted the June 22 exam. You come out of the exam hall and you have that body language, I'll do it, I'll pass it. And in that sort of body language, you conclude your marks on a higher scale. But the examining team or the marking team, which is looking at your paper or your answer, is doing an unbiased assessment of your answer. They are rewarding marks to you where they can be rewarded. They're not your enemies. They're not against you. If they believe there is opportunities to give you marks, they will give you marks. But if there is no opportunities to give you marks, they will not. We know there is no negative marking, but that means they're doing an honest, unbiased assessment of your paper. Wherever they believe opportunities are there, they're giving you marks. But your assessment and the actual result, there is a big gap. And first of all, you need to come out of that. So normally students are confused when the result comes out on the 18th of July, why I failed, why I got 44. I assessed myself at 65. Why I got 44, my paper went so well. Why I got 46, my paper went excellent. And as a tutor, you are blank what answer you should give to them. Honestly, you are the one who can judge why you got 44. You gave the paper. You know what exactly happened in the exam hall in 195 minutes. You need to put yourself down and assess where you lacked. You need to investigate your shortcomings. You need to investigate your weaknesses. And I've seen students that even after a week since the results are announced, they're still finding why I failed. Rather, if I was in your position, if the results were announced on 18th, by the 19th of July, I would have concluded my weaknesses. And I'll tell you how you investigate your weaknesses, how you identify your weaknesses. But a lot of time, the student takes so long in carrying out a self-analysis of their failure. And if, even after a week, even after 14 days, even after 3 weeks, they are still in a question mark state, why I failed. If you keep asking why I failed rather than investigate reasons why you failed, you will not pass. So despite the fact the paper difficulty feedback of June exam was like 58%, or rounding it off like 60% student with that 1% easy student, 60% of the student rated paper as manageable. Despite that fact, look at the passing rates. So I think there is an over optimism when you rate the paper, and you normally believe what I did was best, what I did was good, what I did was excellent, not realizing there is a huge expectation gap between the answer you wrote and the answer the examiner exactly want from you. And till the time you're not reducing that expectation gap between you and examiner, or between your answer and examiner answer, you're not passing the paper. But again, whenever I say this, the student believe that the examiner answer is an idealized answer, and they go to the wrong track. They start looking at the examiner answer, they start becoming impressed with the examiner answer, they start looking at the length of the examiner answer, and they'll say, wow, such a good answer, such a long answer, such a big answer. And if you try to replicate the examiner answer, and you try to go to that length of the examiner answer, and you try to do everything the examiner has done in the examiner answer, again, you will fail. Because first of all, that examiner answer is a tutorial guidance. You can learn good things, but you cannot say, I'll produce the same length, I'll do whatever the examiner is doing, and I'll do the same. For example, the examiner write the name and reference number of the accounting standards, but examiner in the examiner report and in the articles mention to the students that there is no credit, there is no marks for naming and putting a reference number of an accounting or an auditing standard. Now, that is a different story. Now, when you idealize an examiner answer, you need to idealize an examiner answer in correlation with the technical articles, in correlation with the examiner reports. Because if you're just looking at an examiner answer and you're idealizing it, you are looking at one side of the picture. And if you go with that one side of the picture to the exam hall, it will be disastrous. You need to look at all the three dimensions. Examiner answers are tutorial guidance. Examiner writes every possible point which was available in the case study just to guide you that these were all available points you can write on. But examiner is not saying these are all the points you should have written. You look at the marking scheme at the end of the examiner answer, and the examiner tell in that marking scheme how many points you should have written. So for example, if there was a question on audit procedures for 6 marks, you need to write 6 procedures because every procedure is worth 1 mark. But when you see the examiner answer, examiner might have written 10 procedures, 12 procedures, because examiner is giving you every possibility that this could had been a valid procedure, and so that you can learn for future exams. But if a student says examiner wrote 12 for 6 marks and I write 12 for 6 marks, you're wasting your time in exam paper because every procedure is worth 1 mark. So a lot of things needs to come together. So that also means that there is a lack of strategy. There is a lack of, there is no proper identification of resources. If you just go down in the answers, read answers, impress with answers, and you say, okay, this is the way of writing answer, and you try to write that way. First of all, by the day of your exam, you will never be able to write that way, the way the examiner is writing. And then again, you will demotivate yourself. And then you enter the actual exam and you try to do the best writing a very long answer. And in that way, you come down with a time management issue. And that is where I took the second feedback on the time management for the June 22 exam. And look at this, look at the results. And that is true results. That happens at every single exam setting. 69% of the respondents I asked said they didn't completed the paper. They didn't completed the paper. So if you are idealizing the answer, you are running after writing a long answer, a lengthy answer, you are compromising your success. If you're just managing completing 75% paper, you're not successful. You will struggle. If you just run after a 50 marks question and you try to do that 50 marks question in 2 hours, you will never be successful. I have guided this so many times in my webinars that there is an ideal time for each question. Try to do the best within time. And that is to be done at home when you're doing assignments, when you're doing practicing at home. Set a timer. So for example, if a question has 35 minutes as an ideal time, put a timer of 35 minutes and see where you reach by 35 minutes. That is what you can write in the exam hall. Yes, efficiency will come. First time, what you write in 35 minutes and 10th time, what you write in 35 minutes will be remarkably different. But your ability, judge your ability, how much you can do in 35 minutes. So if you stretch, instead of 35 minutes, you say, okay, I'll put 55 minutes. You're compromising another question. And in the other question, there could be some easy marks. In the other question, there could be an opportunity which you are losing by putting in extra time to the first question or to the second question. So if you put extra time on one question, you are ignoring the opportunities in the other questions, which could have been better, giving you marks, which could have been better, and you must have prepared them very well. So please put the time allocated for each question. Don't overrun, because you need to grab the opportunities. And the more opportunities you grab across the 100 marks paper, you will be in a better position to surpass the 50 barrier. Otherwise, you will be failing in those 40s. So 31% students said that they did complete paper on time. Perhaps they followed that time management philosophy, which was guided to them in the webinars, that you need to stick to a time allocated to each question. Wherever the time gets over, put a full stop, move on. Don't try to complete that question. Move on to the next question, because every question has opportunities, not just the one you're putting extra time on. So time management, no doubt, is one of the major reasons which contributes heavily to the low passing rates of the AAA paper. And when you look at the 31% passing rate for the June 22 exam, one of the top reasons for that low passing rate is there must be hundreds of students who didn't completed the paper on time for June 22. And the reason of getting 44, 42, 41, 45, 46 was the reason they left with 20% paper. They left with 30% paper. Now, if they would have managed that, they would have gone beyond 50 and the passing rate could have been 42, 43%. So it is you who is to be blamed. You need to sit down, identify the points, the issues guided to you in the webinars so many times, the time management technique so many times, and you need to look at the 3 dimensions: examiner reports, articles, and answers, not just answers, and not just idealizing answers, not just replicating answers. You need to come out of that mindset sooner. What is the issue then? The issue where I was just discussing, time management. You need to overcome that somehow. You need to ensure that the percentage of percentage of paper completing should rise. The percentage of paper you complete should go up 90, 95%. You should try to ensure that every question is done within the time, whatever you can do. Suppose the first question, within the time, you can only manage to complete 80%. Put a full stop. Move on to the next question. Don't run to complete the first question, even the time is over. So even if you've done 80% of the question number 1 and the time is up, stop, go to the next question. Because there are opportunities awaiting you. There are opportunities welcoming you in the question number 2 and question number 3. You cannot just lose them by completing the first question. So time management is a main reason of low pass rates in AAA. And till the time the student don't realize this, till the time the student don't take a serious note of what I've discussed on time management with you in this session and in my webinars, you are repeating the same mistake and you are contributing yourself to the low pass rates of AAA and towards your failure. Number 2, lack of practice of recent papers. That is important. See, you need to understand the right rigor of your exams. You're appearing for exams in 2022. And if you're practicing revision kits, you're practicing old papers, 2011, 2010, 2009, 2012, 2014, useless. You are appearing for exams in 2022, where your focus has to be on recent papers. And recent papers are far more difficult than the older papers. The rigor of exam has changed. So if you are practicing recent papers starting from September 2018 onwards, that's better. So September 2018 onwards, you have to practice the paper. And that is where you get the right flavor of the 2022 exams. That is where you get the right mindset of the examiner. So I believe September 2018 should be the starting point and going towards the last available paper on ACCA website. September 2018 and moving onwards. Not reading examiner reports of recent settings. I believe there is so much in examiner reports. At least if you can read examiner reports of last 4 sittings, would be amazing. And I always tell students, download the reports, take a printout of the report, keep a red pen, keep a green pen, start reading. Examiner will tell you weaker students. Examiner will tell you stronger student. Examiner will tell you students should not do this. Examiner will tell you students should do this. Examiner will even give you examples. Examiner will even give you suggestions on a topic by topic basis, risk, procedures, evidence, reporting. You can learn so much out of the examiner reports. And if you can highlight the weaker part in red and the stronger part in green and the advices of the examiner in green, and after end of every examiner report, you can make a summary. And that summary, you can divide the summary into don'ts and do's and don'ts. And that summary will be beneficial. And after reading 4 examiner reports, you will have 4 summaries. Go over the summaries again. And then see, okay, this is what the examiner believe, or this is what the examiner mentioned that I should not do it. And relate with yourself if you have failed in the June 22 exam. Isn't that the reason why I failed? Try to find the weaker student summary from the 4 recent examiner reports and try to relate that weaker student summary with you and see how many points mentioned in weaker student relates with you. If you find 5 to 6 points, you're finding your reason why you failed at 44, 43, 42, 45. So the analysis of the weaker and the stronger student and the summaries of every examiner report and revising them will give you lots of do's and don'ts. And then you practice the recent paper after you've read the examiner reports. After you read the examiner report, then do the recent papers. Because when you are doing the recent papers, you will ensure you're not doing something the weaker student do. And you will ensure you do everything the stronger student do that will improve the quality of your answer. So that's very, very important. So try spending time on reading 4 recent examiner report with a red and a green assessment and a summary. That is very, very beneficial. You need to believe that. You need to trust that. Every of my student who followed this technique passed. Whether that was the first attempt passer, I've seen students, I've counseled students, students who comes to me saying, this is my 11th sitting, this is my 7th sitting, this is my 10th sitting, and you're shocked. And he says that I need your counseling. And one of the main point in the counseling is the point number 3, examiner reports. And those students with 7, 8, 9, 10 exam sittings with failures never read examiner reports. And the first time they read, with the way I'm guiding you, they passed in their 12th exam sitting. They passed in their 8th exam sitting. So you're not even reading the resources given to you by ACCA. You're not even bothered about reading resources given to you by ACCAs. And then how can you be successful in AAA? So first of all, organizing yourself, finding the right resources, sitting with the right resources over the next 45 days or next 50 days ahead of your September 22 exams is a key success factor. So you failed in June, look forward. I believe failure is a success in progress. So you need to move ahead, be optimistic, try to find the weak areas and work upon them. Failure is not the end of things, right? Failure is just a beginning of a new journey. And you need to overcome the fear factor. Number 4th, not understanding what the requirement is asking for. You are in so hurry reading the requirements, and any student who spend a careful time reading the requirement, because most of the time the requirements in the AAA paper either contains do not or either contains do. Now, if a requirement is asking you should not, but you didn't read that, and you delivered to the examiner what the examiner was saying you should not, what sort of an impression are you creating? You're wasting your time. If the examiner is saying you should not identify risk relating to disclosures, but still when you're writing an audit risk answer, you are writing risk relating to disclosures, like a risk for a related party disclosure. When the examiner is saying no, you cannot write risk relating to disclosures. So if you ignore the do not and you do it, first of all, you're wasting a time. Second, you're putting a very bad impression. And the last result is a failure. A lot of time, examiner writes a note under the requirement. And in the note, the examiner says, you should do this, you should not do this, you should ignore this. And students don't read that. A lot of time when you're reading the requirement, in one requirement, there is multiple things. With examiner put a comma, or examiner put an and the student is not bothered about looking at a comma and that requirement with multiple things becomes one for a student if you're ignoring the comma and an and you just do one thing when the requirement was asking for 3 things. So a careful read of the requirement is essentially important to deliver a complete answer. And if the question says do not, you're not doing it. If the question says do, then you have to do it. So read the commas, read the ands, read the do not, read the notes given under certain requirements very carefully. Answers not blended or synced with case. This is a key point. Just like the examiner reports was a key point. So many times the student write the answer mostly out of the case study. Your answer has to blend with case. Your answer needs to relate with case. Your answer needs to embed with case as much as possible. If your answer is blended to the case, if your answer is linked to the case, if your answer is synced to the case, more you are successful. But if you try journalizing things, you try to take hypothetical assumptions, you try to create your own story, you try to spoil the story of the examiner by taking wild guesses, wild assumptions, hypothetical assumptions, and you destroy the story of the examiner, and rather you create your own story and write your own answer. That is a disaster. So ensure your answer is blended with the case. Your answer is extracted out of the case. The information given to you in the case study is blended in your answer. That's a good answer. Adapt yourself, and not taking sound judgments. You are a manager in the AAA paper, not taking sound judgments. How many times the examiner asks you recommend actions? You're not recommending sound actions in the context of the situation, in the context of the case. How many times the examiner asks you explain the impact on opinion, explain the impact on audit report? Sound judgment, judging the right opinion, judging the right impact on report. How many times the examiner asks you evaluate whether to accept the request from the new audit client, whether I should be accepting the new audit client, whether whether the new audit client is a good client or a bad client. Judgments on materiality, judgments whether something is material or immaterial. How many times the examiner says evaluate the significant audit risk? Have I ever exercised my judgments on prioritizing risk, significant risk? Have I ever thought about that I should prioritize my risk when I'm writing the answer? I've even covered that in my last June 22 webinar. I'm telling you the definition of what is a significant risk, what are prioritized risks, how you identify the prioritized risks. But look at this. These are issues, and you need to take them one by one and try to find where is your issue among all this. And if you got some lesson out of this very short session where I was just brainstorming the downtrend in the AAA passing rate for June 22 exams, which the student is making a fuss of, that the passing rate has gone down and down and down, they're not realizing that the passing rate has gone down is not unusual, because that's quite usual for the AAA paper. But the passing rate has gone down because you are impairing the quality of your answers. You are impairing yourself in terms of quality. So you need to increase your quality of answers. You need to improve upon your performance. The passing rates will go above 40, 45 even. But it's you taking responsibility and custody, because this is the paper you choose. So if you have flunked in the paper AAA for June 22 exams, don't be disheartened, right? Because there are so many students who passed this paper after 7th attempt, 8th attempt, 9th attempt, 3 attempts, 2 attempts, 4 attempts. So you need to prepare yourself, right? You need to prepare yourself in the right manner. And definitely the next exam setting coming up in September, you will be successful. And you are the one who can lift the passing rates by your better performance, by the better understanding of things, by the better understanding of what has been taught to you. And if you try ignoring these things and you say, oh, I'll do what I think is best, the result might be the same as you got in June 22. So please ensure I'll be coming up with more webinars for September 22 exams, as I do webinars for every particular exam setting. I will be doing the webinars around the 21st of August for September 22 exam settings. I will be putting very specific videos ahead of my webinar on professional marks, which are coming in the AAA exams for the first time from September 22 exams, which is the one coming up. I will be covering the professional marks in my webinars well, and I will be doing specific videos before the 21st of August on professional marks, so you know exactly how to gain the professional marks. And even if there is any misconceptions, you have built up any fear factor around professional marks, you have got to know something wrong about professional marks, everything needs to be mitigated, and a proper guidance needs to be given to you on professional marks. So this is it. A specific discussion on the downtrend in the AAA passing rate, particularly in the June 22 exam setting. I'm Kashif Kamran signing off from this specific discussion, and I wish you the very best of luck for your upcoming September 2022 exams. Take care. Have a nice day. Goodbye and Allah Hafiz.